You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and we're glad to have with us live special guest on the show, Mr. Dilip Sinha. He's a former permanent representative of India to the UN, particularly in Geneva. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us, Ambassador Sinha. And I'm sure you heard External Affairs Minister's interventions on particularly India's take on multilateralism, and once again pitching very, very strongly as far as reforms at the UNSC is concerned. Now, one thing is very clear, would you agree, Ambassador, that India at this juncture is clearly leading the global conversation when it comes to pitching in for reforms, not just in the way of talking or rhetoric, but actually pressing these reforms in action?
Yes, thank you for having me on your show. The statement by the External Affairs Minister at the Rasina Dialogue was extremely important, and it was a very comprehensive statement that lays out India's policy on what it expects of multilateral institutions. It was a statement that was that took into account the current geopolitical realities and the limitations of multilateral organizations and India's what India expects of these organizations. One of the important things that he made was he, of course, stressed the need for Security Council reform, but he pointed out that one cannot expect a big ticket reform at the moment. One has to look for incremental progress in different organizations of the UN and the other multilateral organizations. And one can look for issue-based coalitions or groupings to be formed in these organizations for this incremental progress to be achieved.
Right. But specifically on that, India leading the chorus of Global South, but the deepening gap of Global North and Global South, do you think in that direction there's going to be a blueprint provided by India itself?
Yes, the statement of the minister took into account the fact that the world today consists of different groups on different issues. So one has to create these coalitions and join them on the basis of one's interests. For example, in the case of climate change, you have one set of groups. In the case of Security Council reform, you have another set of groups. So India joins these various groups, taking into account its interests, but it leads the forces for reforming of these organizations, because India now is a major player in the world, and India is in certain respects not on the high table, especially in the Security Council, but also in other organizations where the permanent members play a very important role and an unduly dominant role in these organizations because of their permanent status in the Security Council. And these organizations need to be reformed, both to get out of that old pressure of power politics, and also to take into account the interests of the countries of the South, as well as of the new countries that have joined the United Nations over the last 70 years. The External Affairs Minister pointed out that when the UN was formed, it had 51 members,
yes.
and today it has 193.
4 times, yes.
Exactly.
So, Ambassador Sinha, what are the challenges going forward? There are, of course, and it cannot happen overnight. But do you think in that direction, we used to really talk about it earlier, but now the way in the last 5 years or 4 years or so, especially the aftermath of Russia-Ukraine war, India's position on the war to end vis-a-vis Global South voice and the reforms at the multilateralism level, all those conversations can actually take shape in terms of tangible outcomes. There's going to be some movement now on those conversations.
Well, one has to keep trying, as the minister pointed out, because the progress will be slow. It's at a glacial pace, especially in the Security Council, where there has been no progress at all. In the WTO, which deals with trade, there has been no progress. Efforts are being made in the WTO. In climate change, there has been some progress, but not enough. Then there are other organizations that deal with intellectual property, health, where again the the progress that has been made has been extremely slow, but we have to keep at it. And that is the point that was made by the minister, that we cannot give up hope. And India, as a leading country which wants reform, will keep pressing for it, even if the progress is slow and very discouraging.
What about the balance of power, India's equations with the West and the East and the rest?
With the West, our relations have improved considerably. In fact, over the last 2 decades or so, our relations with the West have been extremely good. The West is our largest trading partner, the largest destination of our exports, the largest source of our foreign investment. And also at the geopolitical level, one sees at the strategic level India's cooperation with the Quad. So our relations with the West are extremely good. We are managing our relations with China. We have had recently the dialogue, the 21st military level talks with China to see that we are able to keep the border, the disputed border under control. Our relations with Russia are good. We have been able to continue our defense cooperation. But most importantly, our relations with the countries of the South, where we are an important spokesman of the countries of the South. And there we have always ensured that we project the interests of the South in organizations like the WTO, climate change, and other economic and developmental organizations, where the interests of the developing countries, interests of the global South, are extremely important.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sinha, for joining us and putting this in perspective.